Hi, hello, how's it going? It's Elena and welcome back to my channel. I'm bringing you guys another finance related video, which I'm excited about. I sprinkled a few of those into 2020, but I plan on making quite a few more into 2021, so stay tuned. As I've mentioned in a few other videos in the past, kind of talking about finances, I mentioned that I just really love talking about financial education and empowerment. I feel like there's definitely not enough women in this space. It's definitely a very male-dominated space, the world of finance and finance education. And it's something that's just super important to learn for your own independence, for your future self. So today I want to talk about a few different ways to invest $100. So a month or two ago, or I guess a couple months ago now, I made a video on how to invest for beginners. So if you haven't watched that, I recommend checking that out because I go over a lot of like base level knowledge, terms, definitions, things that you probably weren't taught in school because we definitely weren't taught nearly enough about anything revolving finances in school. So I'll link that down below and I'll probably refer to it more than once throughout this video. So first off, I am by no means a financial advisor, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. Please do your own education, look into things on your own. I hope to just inspire you on your own financial education journey. So when it comes to the world of investing, it's all about risk versus reward. You're gonna have to take calculated risks in order to grow your wealth over time. And it's gonna be a journey of highs and lows. It's like a roller coaster, but overall there has been generally an upwards curve. So much of it is putting in your money, letting it sit, riding out the roller coaster. So before you get into investing your money, I think it's very important to address any high interest rate debt you might have. You want to get that paid off initially. Definitely want emergency savings. I know it's not the sexiest thing, but trust me, I mean, literally look around. We're in a pandemic. If a pandemic can come out of nowhere, you never know what might else just kind of surprise you. So you really want 3 to 6 months of income saved, tucked away for a rainy day, because you never know what's gonna happen. So I highly recommend that as just kind of like a base before starting off. A lot about building wealth is all about the long game. It's about patience, it's about waiting it out, which means it can be a bit slow at the beginning. But I think there's some ways to learn and enhance your own financial portfolio. So let's dive into a few ideas. So while we're on the topic of emergency savings, let's talk about high yield saving accounts. So high yield saving accounts are essentially an alternative to the bank account your money might be sitting in right now, where you can make a small percentage of interest on the money that you save away there. It tends to pay more than the national average of a regular savings account. So a high yield savings account can be a good option for just slightly increasing your income. Thanks to the higher interest rate, money in these accounts tend to grow a bit quicker. It's gonna be very low risk. It's gonna be also low reward. And while it does not do a lot, it is better than just letting your money sit and do nothing at all. Next, let's talk about index funds. So if you didn't see my past investing video, I discussed a little bit about what an index fund is. The way I like to explain it is that it kind of is like a bouquet of flowers. So if you're to buy a stock, let's say in Tesla, so you buy one stock in Tesla that is like one rose, and you're holding onto that rose and you're hoping the leaves don't fall off or that it withers, and you're hoping it grows and flourishes. But putting all your trust in just one stock can be quite risky. So an index fund is great because it's essentially a bouquet of a whole bunch of different stocks or bonds. So instead of just one rose, you got hundreds of roses, or even potentially thousands of roses. So an index fund is essentially a portfolio of stocks or bonds that tracks a particular market index. Buying into an index fund is like buying that whole bouquet. So if certain stocks start to dip, if certain flowers start to wither, to just keep going on with my example, you have a whole crap ton of other flowers to offset it. So it's great for a passive investor because it's super hands-off. It's considered a great beginner investment because it's pretty low risk because you're having this balance of the stocks across the board. You don't have to have any real knowledge of the stock market overall to invest in index funds, and it's offering a lot of diversification. So again, that risk factor kind of starts to decrease because you're diversifying where you're putting your money through this index fund. Of course, in regards to this, I'm not telling you to invest in anything specifically. It's all about education. I highly encourage you to do your own research on index funds, on different types of accounts, but I'm going to talk about a few of the most popular ones like the S&P 500. So the S&P 500 index fund essentially mimics the performance of the 500 largest companies or the Dow Jones pounds industrial average. So if you want to invest in the S&P 500, you don't have to invest in the individual stocks. Now you can invest in all the stocks in this index fund through mutual funds or ETFs. So if you want to invest in something like the S&P 500, what you're gonna need to do is open a brokerage account. In my personal experience and my finances, I use Vanguard. Again, you can find this type of index fund on a bunch of different major platforms like Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Merrill Lynch, etc. So for example, if you're going through Vanguard, like I personally am, there's a couple different options. So there's like VU and VFIAX. One is a mutual fund and one is an exchange traded fund or an ETF. The biggest difference is that the VFIAX one has a much larger minimum to invest. It's like $3,000. So if you have $100, that's not the way to go. But if you want to look into other index funds, there's a lot of different types of low index funds to learn more about for yourself. The goal of an index fund is to put your money in there and then let it sit and let it grow over time for years, if not decades and decades, and seeing it grow slowly over time as it rides the wave of the stock market, essentially. Obviously, don't put all your eggs in one basket. You always want to make sure you're putting your money in different areas because again, we don't know what's going to happen. So I'm gonna couple a Roth IRA in this like index fund section. So a Roth IRA is essentially a tax advantage retirement account that you can invest through. So there's like traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. What makes Roth IRAs really special is that you're taxed at the front end. So then when you pull out the money at the very end, once you're at your retirement age of about 59 and a half, it is not taxed. And what's great about that is most likely when you're in my age range, I just turned 24, I'm most likely going to be at a lower tax bracket now than when I'm 60. If all things go well, hopefully my career just goes upwards and I'm at a higher tax bracket. So taxes are taken out of what you earned and then you can access all the profit at the end, which is crazy. So I feel like everything I've read across the board, they're like max out your Roth IRA account and that caps out at about $6,000. Okay, I'm gonna pull up a Roth IRA retirement calculator to show you guys the power of a Roth IRA, investing your money, compounding interest, all those beautiful things. Freshly 24. Let's say I plan to retire at, I'm just gonna say 61. Let's say I'm starting with $1,000 in my Roth IRA. If we're saying $100 a month, we're gonna say a hopeful annual return of about 8%. In 37 years, your investment could be worth over $290,000. So through that time, I'd be putting in on my end about $44,400, but the growth is 84% of the total, so around $245,000, which is insane. The Roth IRA and the compounding interest, like please take advantage of it. Let's just play around with this to be fun. So let's say you start contributing $400 a month, so close to around $100 a week instead. $1 million. It says in 37 years, your investment could be worth $1.1 million. So clearly, the more you invest now has a massive impact on what your future can look like. So if you want to start a retirement account for yourself, again, I use Vanguard. So I set mine up through Vanguard. I opened up a Roth IRA and you can choose different investments. I personally chose the targeted date retirement fund because it essentially does all the work for me. I just put money in, it picks the investments for me and it gets more conservative the older I get. This does have a minimum investment of $1,000. So it's something to think about. I saved up, I knew I wanted to do this, so I saved up when I was like 19 to open this account up, and then I've been adding in ever since, and it's grown quite a bit, so start your Roth IRA. Next up is the 401k, which is another retirement account. The beauty of a 401k is that oftentimes it's offered by your employer and they offer a certain amount that they'll match you. So what makes it a little bit different too is that this is money that you put in pre-tax. So when you take it out at the end at your retirement, that's when you're taxed on it. A lot of times an employer will offer a 401k match, which means up to a certain percentage, they'll match what you're willing to put into your 401k, which is kind of crazy. It's essentially free money. So I would say if your employer offers you a 401k match, definitely if you're able to at least put in $100 or if not more towards that match percentage. It also makes sense if for some reason you're in a super high tax bracket when you're younger and you think you'd be in a much lower tax bracket when you're older. You never know. Obviously it's super dependent person to person, but this is a great way if you have a little extra money on hand to invest that will work towards your future. All right, I had a bit of a technical difficulty. Don't mind the change of lighting, just try to go with it. So next up, I want to talk about stocks. When it comes to investing in more individual stocks, it definitely is higher risk, higher reward. You really want to be careful when investing in stocks, especially if you're going to be investing large amounts of money. It takes a lot of time and research and knowledge on the stock market. But if you're looking to invest $100, I think it's a really great kind of educational step to get to understand stocks better. I'd say there's pretty much less barrier to entry now than ever before, so it's a great chance to try it out, learn for yourself as you go. For example, there's things now such as fractional shares. So through a platform like Robinhood, you can now invest in fractional shares. So let's pull up an example. Okay, so the price of Tesla stock right now is $735. Let's say you want to invest $50 in Tesla. Now you can invest and buy stock in that company for like $50 or lower amounts without having to buy that entire share. With this emergence of fractional share investing, you could even take that $100, now invest in a bunch of different companies to, you know, $10 here, $20 there, see what works for you. There's also micro investing apps, which I think are another good option to kind of get to know stocks a little bit better and invest smaller amounts of money. So a good example of a micro investing app would be something like Acorn, that for every purchase you make on your credit card, it rounds up your purchase to the next dollar, and it takes that extra money and it invests it for you. So let's say you get a $5.50 coffee, it's gonna round that up to $6. It's gonna take that 50 cents and it's going to invest it. One other way is robo-advisors. It's something else you might want to try out. It basically provides portfolio management online, but without like an actual human running it. Instead of paying a financial advisor for their time and their expertise, instead what you often will do is essentially answer a series of questions, kind of discussing your risk tolerance, some of your goals, and the robo-advisor will take that information and then help you invest. You really can't time the market, and I think when you want to learn more about stocks, testing the waters is a great way to learn and to slowly get more comfortable with this world of stock investing. So best of luck to you on that. Play it safe. Do your own research. I believe in you. So stepping away from the classic financial investing ideas, I wanted to talk a little bit about like the DIY thrift flip world. I think this is a great way to potentially invest $100. I used to do this a ton in high school. I would buy stock goods. So I'd buy like plain white Keds essentially, and I'd buy fabric paint. I'd paint galaxies, I'd paint like the Union Jack flag, and I sold them on Etsy. And I basically started a small business on Etsy selling hand-painted shoes, hand-painted shirts. I sold these cool little, what I thought was cool at the time, little choker necklaces. I always tried to keep my supply costs as low as possible, and then would resell these items through Etsy and made like a good amount of money by investing that $100 or so into something that I knew I could create and kind of get crafty on and resell. Was a great way to invest that $100. Another really good way is thrift flipping. You could go to the Goodwill, and if you have a fashion-oriented eye, spend $100 on really sick clothing and then resell it for double or triple, or even potentially quadruple on somewhere like Depop or Etsy or Poshmark, depending on the pieces you find. You can thrift flip them by kind of like upcycling them yourself. So maybe painting it or sewing it in certain areas or adding patches or just kind of adding a personal touch to it. A lot of times can increase that value. But again, like I love shopping on Depop. So I'm like, these cool pants, this girl probably spent like $3 buying. Like I will pretty gladly still buy for like $28. Like you never really know what you're gonna find on there. And oftentimes too, shopping secondhand on one of those apps, I know I'm getting a better deal and it's a bit more sustainable than if I was to shop at other main, you know, huge retail stores. But I also know that that seller's probably making some coin. And I'm like, get it, sis. I think that whole like crafty, flipping clothing, DIY world, there's a lot of potential to invest just a bit of money and potentially resell for a better price. Lastly, it's a bit cheesy, but arguably the most important is invest in yourself. I feel like a cheesy mom saying that, but the human capital that you gain over time is something that can never be taken away from you. So if you invest $100 in books, $100 in a course, and a lot of times the things that you really take the time to learn can either improve, you know, the job you're currently in, help you get a different, better job, or just overall sharpen and increase your skill set to potentially use as well to make more money in the future. For example, I most recently bought a Kindle and I got it secondhand. I want to say it was close to around $100, and it has been such a game changer for me. I have fully jumped on the e-reader bandwagon. I also use the app Libby, which I highly recommend. You can like find your local public library, set up a library card online, connect it to Libby, and then through Libby connect it to my Kindle, and I can basically rent essentially almost every book under the sun absolutely for free, send it to my Kindle almost immediately, and read whatever I want. I feel like having a Kindle as well has really gotten me to read so much more, to kind of diversify what I'm actually reading. So I'm getting back into fiction. I've been reading books on spirituality and finances and self-improvement. Highly recommend any investment in yourself that's gonna set you up for success, that's gonna improve your mental health, your physical health, your intellectual health, I think is always gonna be worth it and is a great way to spend $100. Because again, that's something that can't be taken away from you and will only just be enhanced and increased with time to come. Okay, so I don't want this to be too long and rambly, so I'm going to wrap it up. But those were a couple ways to invest money moving into 2021. We've got a new year ahead of us. It's a good time to kind of just try to think of it as a bit of a fresh slate to dive into and kind of reevaluate the way you see your finances, the way you address financial education in your own life. I hope that was useful. If you enjoy it, make sure to subscribe and like it. It'd be great if you left me a comment. Let me know what you enjoyed, or if you have any other things that you think would be a great investment as well. Until next time, thanks so much for watching. Bye.